Hello, everybody. Welcome to CaveNet NSS webinar series. I'm Debbie Spoons, the chairman of the webinar series. What we're going to have tonight is a really interesting webinar by Beth Courtwright. It's called Salt, Smoke, and Sketchy Slopes. That'll all make sense in just a few minutes. 11 miles of survey in Grand Canyon Cave. Now, this is pretty awesome because it's a lot of us know there's caves there, but those of you from Arizona know there are no caves to speak of in Arizona. So that's kind of a joke. Anyway, we want to thank our sponsor, NSS. Without them, there's no way we'd have these webinars. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Beth. I met her at a convention. She gave this during the NSS convention in Montana. This is a much more expanded version because she has a lot more time now. She didn't have to crunch it down into 20 minutes. But Beth Courtwright has been caving for about 11 years. She began exploring underground while attending college and primarily caved in south central Kentucky, where she learned to survey, which is a good skill for cavers to have. If you don't know how to do that, that is something to figure out. And during this time, Beth also got involved with the group Surveying Caves in collaboration with archaeologists at Maya sites in the Yucatan Peninsula. That's pretty cool. And sorry, my paper just disappeared here. Through her adventures with the caving group in Kentucky and also in Mexico, Beth was also invited to a week-long expedition in Leche Guia. That's pretty cool. In Carlsbad, New Mexico. In 2011, Beth has since returned to Leche Guia, so lucky, many times, and been to many other New Mexico caves, and has had many day trips and expeditions there. Beth also participates in expeditions in Montana's Bob Marshall Wilderness and other Grand Canyon National Park caves. Now, she has got some stunning, amazing pictures for everybody to look at. At the end of Beth's webinar, we will have the question and answer. Please type in your questions. I will ask them to Beth. If you have any technical issues, other problems I need to deal with, or you have a question, go ahead and pop it up right then, and I'll save all the questions for the end. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Beth, who is going to give us all kinds of great information. You ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks so much, Debbie. Hi, everyone. My name is Beth Courtwright, and I'm going to tell you about some recent discoveries and survey work in the Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona. Like Debbie was saying, a shorter version of this talk was given at the U.S. Exploration session of the NSS convention this past summer. That was in Helena, Montana, and I gave that talk with Ellen Whittle, so she definitely deserves credit for writing this presentation as well. So this title, I got to give some explanation. Salt, Smoke, and Sketchy Slopes covers three of the main themes in the 2016 and 2017 expeditions to a particular area in the Grand Canyon, on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. The expeditions operate under a research permit to explore and map caves in the park. The caves are very dangerous to access, and really, aside from these sorts of permitted trips, caves in the park are closed. So this first part, salt, we decided to start with this because a lot of the formations in the caves we work in are composed of salt-based minerals like mirabilite and epsomite. Think Epsom salt like what you would buy at the grocery store. There's also a lot of gypsum in these highly decorated caves. And okay, the other reason we made salt part of the title is because we sweat a ton. As we carry heavy packs, we're commuting up and down this 200-foot vertical commute each day and climbing up and down these giant breakdown rooms full of boulders the size of cars. Looks like my slide might not be advancing here. Debbie, can you tell me if I'm still on?
Yep, you sure are. And it looks
Okay.
great. It says salt.
Yes, it looks like it's just not going to the next
Oh, it's not
part there.
turned. There
Oh,
you
okay.
go.
And
Awesome.
it was just taking a good long while, taking its time. Let me
Okay,
get
now
back to there for
just
you.
we just lost your screen. Can you go back and hit your screen?
Okay, so it should
Hang on
be
just a
on
second.
there.
Let me give it back to you and make sure you got the pop up.
Sorry. Okay, sorry about
Okay.
that. There it
Oh, not a
is.
problem. Awesome.
All right, we're back. Okay, so
We're back.
so yeah, we see formations like this one. This is this sort of Christmas tree that is formed up into a dome in the ceiling, and just some really unusual formations that are all made of salt. It's just not that common to find salt formations in caves in the United States. And there are even some places that we actually sank like several inches deep in this salt-laden sediment. This is a picture near the entrance of Gryffindor Cave, which I'll explain more about later. When we washed our boots after this exploration, uh, the salt leached from the seams, and it almost looked like, like a sweatband on a well-worn hat with bright lines of salt along the seams. It was just absolutely crazy. Our second theme is smoke, and that was because during the most recent expedition, there was a prescribed burn up on the canyon rim just above our camp. And you might think that there's absolutely no possible way a valley as large as the Grand Canyon could ever fill up with smoke. We found out it can, and definitely did. The air quality was a lot better inside the caves, so we ended up rushing each day to get in, just to get a break from breathing that thick smoke. To give you an idea of just how bad it got, we usually have just amazing views of the canyon, unbelievable stars at night. You can see all the way to the south rim. This picture on the top, I called it the before picture. That was on our hike in, and it was like it usually is, absolutely beautiful, maybe just a little bit hazy. Uh, but then the bottom photo is a similar view on our hike out. And that was pretty much how it was the entire length of the expedition. It was extremely smoky. Uh, During this particular week, we estimated that the visibility sometimes dropped below 300 feet in the canyon. The air quality was just horrible. These photos, again, were taken about a week apart. I spent most of my time on the surface wearing a wet bandana over my nose and mouth just to breathe. It was, I even slept with it over my nose and mouth. We were brushing ash and burned pine needles off of our tents every morning and off of our gear that we would leave out. It was constantly falling on camp, and geez, our gear smelled like smoke for months. So the last theme is sketchy slopes. These photos can sort of speak for themselves. Here, the trips were just absolutely filled with sketchy slopes, starting on the hike in and continuing into the caves. Here's a cave entrance with someone going through the typical kind of funky entrance technique. We often do what's called a J-hang. So this person on rope that you're seeing in the photo, he's doing a kind of a tricky maneuver where the bottom of the rope is anchored inside the cave entrance, making it kind of look like the letter J. And we rappel off the cliff until we get close to the entrance. And then we have to change over, to ascending gear and pull ourselves in. Keep in mind that we're still dangling about 400 feet above the canyon floor as we have to switch gears. You might wonder how we actually get that rope anchored inside the cave the first time, because obviously you can't pull yourself in. Well, you got to sort of swing in to some of these entrances. The first person that enters the cave has to get there somehow. That can involve throwing a hammer tied to some webbing until it hooks on the rock, and then sort of pulling ourselves in. You can imagine that the hammer turned grappling hook method doesn't always work perfectly. So sometimes it comes loose and we end up being back out over the canyon, and boy, those screams really do echo really well down there. At some other entrances, we have to climb up or rappel down below the actual entrance until we land on a ledge, and then we'll climb back up to get into the cave. This photo shows a few entrances that require that sort of intense scrambling. The two guys on the left are standing in the entrance of a cave called Double Bopper Cave. They climbed up that rocky slope in front of them to get there. The little black streak that you see in the top center of the photo is the entrance to Double Bopper Cave. It's across the canyon. And when we rappel off the top of that cliff into Double Bopper, we land in those trees just below that kind of gray streak on the wall. And then we have to hike back up that slope to get into the cave. So we land about 200 feet below where we went over the edge, and we hike back up another 100 to actually get into the cave. So there you have it, the three main themes of salt, smoke, and sketchy slopes. And now I'll sort of switch gears, and I gotta start with a short history of the cave exploration in this area. Expeditions to the area began in 2006. They were, and by the end of 2015, I mean, they were hugely successful at finding caves and big long passages. There were over 45 miles of passage mapped in that, 9 years. Double Bopper Cave was the kind of the highlight. It's the longest in Arizona. At that time, it was 27.67 miles. And there were just amazing gypsum formations inside and thousands of mummified bats, which I'll definitely talk about later as well. In 2016, there were lots of leads checked in the area, and this Gryffindor Cave was discovered in an adjacent canyon to Double Bopper. Once we started mapping that, we found that passages were coming within 80 feet of some of passages in Double Bopper, of mapped cave in Double Bopper. So really, really close. And we kindled those dreams of a connection. You know, can we make Double Bopper a couple miles long just by making this connection to Gryffindor Cave? There was lots of airflow and lots of indication that there was a connection. So we headed back in 2017, and the connection dreams were realized. Connections were made with Double Bopper between Gryffindor Cave and Bottom Bopper, which is an entrance just below Double Bopper's entrance. You can see in September, lots of connections, and then we continued mapping in Double Bopper. Checked some leads in some smaller caves in the area, but didn't make any huge breakouts. We went back the next month in October and continued surveying the Gryffindor side of Double Bopper Cave system. We did discover a small hippogriff cave on that expedition, mapped a little over 3,000 feet of it. And this cave was significant because it was some of the first pools that we've seen in any of these very dry caves in the Grand Canyon. I had to put a highlight of the October expedition was shaking the ash and burnt pine needles off of my stuff every morning. But that was a kind of a low light, I guess. And then, so at the end of 2017, we had over 56.6 miles of cave survey in this area. So getting there, what does it take to get there? This might be actually the hardest part of any of these trips. Our hike to camp is about 3 miles in a straight distance. Doesn't sound like that much. The first 2 miles go along pretty fast as we're hiking on this flat rim, just above the canyon. And then we basically drop over this edge. The last mile takes most of the rest of the day, and we lose about 3,000 feet of elevation on hardly any actual trail. The approach involves hand lines and one of them a vertical rappel. And the way down into the canyon is just extremely treacherous. It's loose and steep, and there are very high consequences if you fall. My knees and quads were hurting pretty bad by the time we reached camp, and that first day that we spent surveying was, everybody kind of wanted a lighter day that day. We carry really heavy packs. I think most of ours were between 40 and 60 pounds for that week of gear. And most of us are using trekking poles, obviously, for the way down. Here, we're getting ready to lower our packs and climb down one of those vertical spots. You can see that we're wearing our caving helmets on the hike in. It also gives you an idea of the kind of the safety precautions necessary as we travel just to the camp. It is a nice view. Here, I think we're about halfway down. So we can start to see that red wall layer of the canyon where the cave entrances are located. And this next picture actually shows one of the last obstacles before we reach Double Bopper Camp. We make our way down this scree slope, and our camp is on that first flat mesa that you see on the upper right-hand side of the photo. Once we get there, camp is absolutely beautiful. If you've never camped down in the Grand Canyon or anywhere in the far back country of this park, it's a completely surreal and special experience. I highly recommend it. As you can see, we're pretty comfortable. All of us are sort of settling down to eat dinner, I think, one evening. And it's a kind of a typical expedition from then on, or until you have to head out. We're checking notes in the evenings and looking at the maps, trying to plan the next day's tasks. The main goal of these trips is always to produce a good map of the caves, so that's often the topic of conversation around camp. So how do we go about actually finding caves in the Grand Canyon? Well, it's all about this rather extreme ridge walking. So armed with a camera and a GPS, binoculars, and like I have on there some seriously sure footing, we walk across the top of the drop-off opposite from where we're looking for entrances. So you can see in the bottom left-hand side of this corner, someone's throwing a rope over the edge. What he had done before was hike along that opposite edge of the canyon, and that can be a huge, huge hike to get over there. This process almost often occurs over the course of days, months, or even years. We might take photos from one side of the canyon across to the wall, to the opposite wall, one year or one expedition, and not go back for a really long while. Once you're above where you think that the target entrance is once you come all the way back around, you anchor a rope and then make your way down to it. Rarely can you get exactly above the entrance, and they're massively overhung, so we end up doing a lot of these highly technical rope techniques to enter the caves. So once we're kind of in the right area, we got that rope anchored, one person has to head down, and they go down with gear to get them over into that entrance. This is just an example of checking, and you can see the entrances on the opposite side there. But and actually, we figure that we've checked over 1,000 of these entrance-like features. You can see there's a lot on that opposite wall, just in this area, and a good number of them aren't significant. A lot of those are more like rock shelters or alcoves, or maybe only 50 or a couple hundred feet deep. But every once in a while, the cave goes, and if it does, that's when the rest of the team follows to begin surveying. So we go over the edge, and some of these photos are us doing just that, over that edge and making our way down to the entrance. Some of us couldn't help but be a little spooked by the 600 feet of exposure here. It's really daunting to be attached to a rope dangling so far above a canyon floor. And man, yeah, that first step is kind of a doozy. Sometimes, like in this photo, 2 ropes are rigged to make travel in and out of an entrance more efficient during an expedition. The photographer here is almost to the top of the climb, looking down towards the Gryffindor Cave entrance, which is about halfway down the cliff there. The next picture is a great photo of someone climbing out of Double Bopper Cave. And I think it might be stuck again. Hold on, waiting for it to go. Huh, looks like we ran into just one more snag, Debbie.
That's okay, just keep talking. It will pop up.
Alrighty, well, I can tell you, I got to this was our second expedition of last fall, and I'm there in the purple helmet, and I didn't have a problem at all with this rappel and climb out of the Gryffindor Cave entrance in the daytime. And here are these, some of the probably the top cavers in the country, in the world, that are like, "Ooh, that was scary," and I'm kind of a small woman, and I was like, I didn't really have a problem with it. But then, man, we came out one night and it was dark. It was nighttime, and I couldn't actually get my light to hit the opposite wall. It's about 250 to 300 feet across the canyon, and it was pitch black darkness all the way around me, all the way up. I could barely see the rope above me. I couldn't see anything below me, and that is actually what freaked me out the most there. Okay, Debbie, it looks like my
Okay, now hit your escape button.
Okay.
And so it will minimize it, and we'll see if maybe we can jog this loose.
Yeah, it came up with a PowerPoint isn't responding right now. Do you want to wait or quit? And I can't actually. Oh, there we go.
All right.
Oh, okay. All right. Woke back up.
Okay, did it come back up?
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
And now you need to take your screen back.
Okay. Here we go. And
awesome.
I'll get it back to just that. Sorry about that again. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
You're a techno wizard.
Well, all right. Hopefully we can keep it going. Okay, so this is that great picture that I started out with. Someone climbing out of Double Bopper Cave. Our camp is on that mesa in the middle of the photo, right across from the entrance. So we often, if you got out first, you often sat across at camp just watching everybody else climb out of the entrance. It was a really good view. Oh. Well, that figures.
Well, things like this happen. Don't worry about the glitches.
All right. Well, here, let's just let's start here. Does this here, let me give you that screen.
There you go.
How does that look? Perfect. Okay. So I'll just take you right inside Double Bopper Cave. It's a little hard to convey what 30 miles of cave is like, but I picked out some photos that hopefully give you a little taste of what the passages and formations are like. This is me standing in the middle of a typical passage in the cave. A lot of them are these large borehole passages, 100 plus tall ceilings and 200 feet wide, really, really large. You can actually see a survey station, the little cairn on the boulder next to me. And I talked about how hard it is to climb up and down these boulders to get through these areas, especially me being about 5 feet tall, and that's about how tall the boulders are. It gets tiring really fast, but it's all so worth it for what we get to see. Some of what we get to see are the wildlife in there. Wildlife inside the cave is limited to mostly dead animals, unfortunately. Humidity is rather low in these caves. It's about 40%. So the animals that die in there tend to be very well preserved. They have essentially been mummified, and there's thousands of them, thousands of mummified bat specimens. So far they've identified 7 different species, and 2 of these are bats that aren't usually known to use caves. So kind of unknown why they're in there, but you can see on this photo there's some formations growing around some of the individuals. And we did observe bats displaying, it's called fall swarming behavior outside the entrance in 2017. That's when they swirl around the cave entrance in the evening, almost playing in the thermals in the canyon. So we did see some live bats in and around the cave, but not nearly as many as the number that are dead and mummified. Trying again to change that slide, but most of them, like you can see with this one, look like they're just sleeping. They're perfect, and you can see the kind of the cracks. Their wings are like paper. I can imagine they're very, very light if you would ever have to pick one up. There's not much left, but they just look like they're alive. They look like they're hanging on the walls, and they're setting on the ground. They look like they're alive, but they are very long dead, just extremely well preserved. Some of them even died while hanging onto gypsum flowers. I have a photo of that coming up, hopefully. And it's just simply an amazing sight to behold. Let's see if we can't get this to... Okay, here we go. Give me just 1 second, I'll take it back.
Okay, you got your screen back yet?
Not quite. It's
Now, sorry that Murphy seems to be here tonight.
Of course.
We practice to try and make sure this doesn't happen, but every once in a while Murphy shows up.
All right, coming back. Here we go.
There we go. Awesome.
I apologize. Okay, so like I said, just they look like live bats. You can see its whiskers, you can see its ears, its nose, and I mean their little thumbs. They're just they're the wrinkles in their wings. They're just laying there, right? And they're just so well preserved. Bats aren't the only mammals that we find in the cave. Oh, sorry. There's the wonderful picture of the one that died hanging on to this gypsum flower. Now, bats are just like birds in that when they're at rest, the muscles in their feet are clenched instead of out like ours, or flat. So when they die, they do really just clamp on to whatever they're on. So yeah, they're on the walls, they're on these formations. Excuse me, just absolutely spectacularly preserved. So like I was saying, these bats aren't the only animals that are mummified in the cave. We also find things like this gray fox. Again, just looking at it, like it could be sleeping there in this corner, just absolutely perfect. Another fox, a ringtail fox, died in one of these areas with lots of those gypsum flowers and needles. The fur on these animals would even move if there was any breeze in the cave, or if you walked by too fast. So again, just laying there, and you can see actually some fallen formations on top of the animal. So pretty old specimen there. All right, I gotta jump to the pretties. This is what Double Bopper has been started to be known for, are these sort of best in the world gypsum flower areas. There are multiple passages like this one here that are absolutely covered in gypsum formations, including flowers, needles, hair, beards. They're just wall to wall, ceiling to floor, absolutely everywhere. And actually, I'm standing here, and behind me, two of the other team members are laying on the floor so they don't hurt anything. They were holding the light, the flashes for the photographer, and they were just laying there. And even when we were done taking photos, they just kept laying there and looking at the ceiling in complete awe that we were witnessing this space. It's really hard to explain. It was a surreal experience. Just amazing. Here's a photo of 3 of the cavers. I'm in the center there, Ian Chutchett and Ellen Whittle on the right. And I'm standing underneath a gypsum chandelier. These types of formations are pretty rare as well. And you know, I just kind of didn't know where to look when I was in these areas, because there were so many beautiful crystals all over the ceiling, on the walls, on the floor. Kind of an assault on your senses there, but a good one. I hopefully going to get this next slide to come up. I have some close-up pictures of the gypsum flowers. These and the crystals in this photo as well are sort of extruded from the rock. A lot of them look like, I don't know, like you took a tube of toothpaste and started squeezing, and the bright white toothpaste came out, but it's a rock, it's a crystal. And we just see these decorated areas that go on for hundreds of feet without a break in the amazingness. It's gonna not go again. Here we go. All right.
You're doing great. Sorry for all the technical glitches.
That's okay. It's probably on my end, but here we go. Okay.
Awesome.
So yeah, so right in the center there, you can see a corkscrew like gypsum flower, and then every other shape you can possibly think of, from straight to spirals to J's and any. I saw one that looked like ram horns. It was just amazing. And so these caves are really dry. I mentioned that, but we did find some evidence of dripping water, at least in the past, like this small pocket of cave pearls. What's not small is that pearl in the middle. It was about the size of a duck egg, and definitely the largest I've ever seen. Here are those close-up pictures of some of the flower areas, and like I said, just absolutely covering the ceiling, and yeah, like tubes of toothpaste. One of those spirals here. It's kind of neat to find shapes among the masses of gypsum flowers. And here's a close-up of that one that was in the larger photo. So this is known as the corkscrew for obvious reasons. And I just stared at it for the longest time and could not get past the fact that the perfection of it was just mind-boggling. Like I said, it feels like some of the formation areas in this cave are endless. They're mostly gypsum needles and hairs hanging from the ceiling here. Some of them would sway as we walked by, and so areas like this, we would always travel slower through these spots so that we didn't damage anything. So unfortunately, it's not all about the pretty stuff. There are also some not so pretty areas of these caves, and it's a lot of work to survey. The main goal of these trips is to get those good maps of the caves, good accurate maps. But unfortunately, you can't spend all your time in those pristine areas. Our hands and our clothes were often stained by the orange-black dust mixed with the sweat, and it's not a very nice combination. We did get to go back to camp each night, which was nice. We could get cleaned up a little bit and go in the next day. But you can see, I think this is Jean's hand here, and her nails are stained with what we started calling the nod, because it's the noxious orange dust, and it's kind of this orange blackish brown dust that as soon as you would step into it, it would, actually I might go back to that photo because this is because James is laying in it in this photo. As soon as you would step on it, it would aerosolize, it would be up in the air, and that's why he's wearing that dust mask. It's up in the air and it sticks to absolutely everything, especially things that are wet with sweat, like your body and your clothes. So yeah, the not so pretty areas. Those are I definitely wanted to put that in there as a big part of what we do in these caves. All right, so by the end of the week, you are very dirty, tired, and ready for a cheeseburger and a milkshake. we look back up towards the canyon rim, and we start our long slog out. Our packs, like this one here, are still pretty heavy and sometimes really awkwardly loaded with gear. This is David Harris, and he ended up hauling out a 5-gallon bucket strapped to the outside of his backpack. The bucket was used in our water collection setup, but it ended up with a crack in the bottom, an irreparable crack. So David got the admirable task of hauling it out. Going out is rather exhausting. After a week of tough caving, we're all in pretty good shape. It doesn't feel that bad. And I think we're also kind of motivated to get back to civilization. Like I said, cheeseburgers and milkshakes, and you kind of treat yourself when you get out. All right, if I can get this to advance, I'll show you. Once we actually do get out, we're all pretty happy about things. We tend to, there we go. We tend to all meet up at Jacob Lake, if you're familiar with the North Rim. Here's our team from September of 2017. And you can see we're all just super happy to be together and to have gotten in and out safely. We accomplished so much. And on these trips, team dynamics is just really important. We're all in close quarters for a week, having to work together, live together, and we're volunteering our time to document the park's resources for them. So we're in it for the fun, and and you can kind of see by the expressions there that we're all having a pretty good time. All right, let's see. Just a little bit further, come on. All right, well, there we go. Hold on, just give me 1 second, I'll get it back. All right, and then one last photo of the team from October 2017. Pirate flags, an inside joke, but we just had an absolute blast, even with the smoke that you can see in the background. This is actually when we were just about to head out, and again, really happy with our accomplishments and having a really good time. Most of us are scattered across the country. We're pretty good friends, but we come together at this time to work towards a common goal. All right, I can't take any credit for all these amazing photographs, except for I stood in front of the camera sometimes or held a flash. I have to thank Steve, James, Jean, and Tiffany for sharing their talent. Without them, we wouldn't be able to enjoy these amazing photographs. Also, our fearless expedition leader, Jason, has put more blood, sweat, and tears into this project than probably anyone else. Without him, it's likely that none of us would know these places exist. So I'm extremely grateful to Jason. With that, I'll try my best to answer any questions you all have and let you enjoy one last look at this Double Bopper entrance, which I can't wait to get back to next week.
All right. All right. go ahead and put your questions in, please, and I will ask them. The reason we do that is to have a good recording for our NSO's website. Let's see. David Herbert says, looks like saltwater taffy to me.
Vanilla, of course.
Says, you probably didn't taste as tasty, though. Let's see. Rich Klein says, under what auspice was his work performed? So whose authority was his work performed?
Okay, so this was, there's a research permit in the Grand Canyon National Park that Jason holds, and he puts together a team each year to do expeditions down to this area. The research permit is to document and report back on the resources in the cave. So yeah, that's our goal, is to let the park know what resources they have and basically why they're working so hard to protect it, why it's a national park. I mean, if you don't get there, if you don't show it or document it, you don't know what you have. So yeah, that's the basis for this research permit that we work under. Also, we have assisted with some hydrology work. I know some work has been done on the bats in Double Bopper. You know, there's some other projects in addition to survey and mapping, like science, that have happened in this area as well under the research permit.
Okay. Let's see. David Herbert has another question. It says, what is the survey methodology? Are you hand mapping, using GPS? What?
Okay, so GPS doesn't work inside the entrance of the cave. So usually, right near the entrance, we will take a GPS. Oh, okay. So he means distance of GPS. Okay, so right near the entrance, we take that GPS point and then we survey in from there. Mostly, what we're using now are Disto X2s, I believe, with handheld instruments, inclinometers and compasses as a backup. Everything, we bring everything that we can to make it as efficient as possible and as accurate as possible. So right now, that's the Disto X2.
Okay, how many survey points did you have normally?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm not very good at math, but let's see, when we surveyed in Gryffindor, we surveyed a little bit over, I think it was 6 or 7 miles of cave, and we usually try to stick to the methodology or rule of keeping our survey shots under 100 feet. So, like I said, I'm really bad at math, but it was
maybe 700.
Yes, it was a lot of survey points and yeah, man, I'm not a sketcher, but I know that, you know, some days we would get to the end and almost have what's called sketcher blowout. They would say, this is huge, and it's been huge all day, and you know, we've surveyed thousands and thousands of feet, and I can't visualize it anymore. It's just too much for my
burn out.
Right. So
okay, what was your job in there? Were you running the tape, running the distos, etc.?
So like I said, I'm not trained as a sketcher, so I mostly took the data, distance, inclination, and compass, all the readings. Sometimes I helped out with the photography trips, and I actually, like I said, I'm pretty small, so I end up getting thrown down small holes, and they say, "Oh, tell us what's down that." Oh, yes. I think a few people can probably relate. So I was usually the push team if there was one.
I have friends that always call me the probe because if there was a really small place, that's where I got sent.
That's
You're
perfect.
probably the same way. Okay, let's see. Pretty's Cost, this is by Laura Cartwright Yale.
Mhm.
Says, Pretty's caused by water that at some point had been deposited in the cave, question mark.
So no, these are I'm guessing you're talking about the gypsum flowers. Those are actually extruded from the rock. It's I guess there's a lot of overburden, right? The rock that's on top of the space in the cave, and just the weight and the um, uh, it's calcium deposits, and yeah, sometimes it's dripping, but gypsum flowers are different. I apologize. I'm not a I'm not a geologist,
Not a problem.
I think it is kind of like that analogy of a tube of toothpaste, right? They're coming out of cracks in the rock.
Hmm. Okay, let's see. Rich Klein says, what is caving potential in other areas of the canyon? And are there other groups working on caves in the Grand Canyon?
There are, yeah. So I've been on a couple of these other trips. If you've ever been down into the Grand Canyon or like on a river trip, you can see these springs coming out of the sides of the canyon walls,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and a lot of those are associated with caves as well. Those are a lot different from these caves. Those are very wet, often stream caves, and with giant waterfalls coming out into the Grand Canyon. So yeah, I know places like Roaring Springs and a place called Vasey's Paradise. It's a popular rafting stop on the Grand Canyon or on the Colorado River. Those sorts of places are also teams are also working in there with survey and exploration and science trips, doing things like dye tracing to figure out where the hydrology of the surrounding area, or even miles and miles away, tracing dye and how it eventually gets to the Colorado River. So
Now,
yeah, a little bit going on.
All trips have to go through the Park Service, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and an expedition leader that I think I bet they have a proposal process, kind of like the other parks in the U.S. And yeah, there's not many of them,
Mm-hmm.
granted, but I mean, you can kind of see why. It's kind of an intense process to make sure everybody stays safe down there and is qualified. So.
No rescues. What about the South Rim? You were talking about the North Rim. Do you know anything about if there's any caves or projects on the South Rim?
There are. I haven't been involved in any of these, but I do know of some caves on the South Rim, sort of in this same feature and same sort of red wall layer of the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know that those are also pretty dry, and they also have their own sort of uniqueness about them. They have maybe not the bats and those formations, but other formation areas that are just absolutely world class. I mean, unlike anything else we've seen. So
Have you been to any of those?
I have not done any work on the South Rim.
Okay. Let's see. Next one. Andrew. I would say your last name, but I would totally decimate it. So, Andrew M. Did these caves have a significant change in elevation inside, or were they rather flat and level?
Um, so I'd say that for the most part they are pretty flat and level. They stay on that same plane. The only difference is the only exception is that I talked about that bottom bopper entrance. So actually, this photo that's up right now, this person is taking the photo looking out of Double Bopper entrance. Single Bopper is that larger entrance you can see in the bottom right. And then Bottom Bopper is below both of them. So, and Double Bopper is now connected with Bottom Bopper. So you can go in through this large entrance and make your way down and in elevation and go out that bottom entrance. So a little bit, but yeah, for the most part, pretty flat on the plane.
So you go in the top, come out the bottom, and then you have to ascend all the way back up.
Yeah, you have to preset that rope. There's or else you'd just be looking out the Bottom Bopper entrance with nowhere to go. There, it's on the cliff or it's on the wall, just looking out into space, and there's sheer rock above and below you, so nowhere to go.
Lots and lots of work. Okay, another question is, were these expeditions funded by the National Park Service, or did you have to pay for them, everything yourself?
So they're not funded at all. Like I said, we're all volunteers. We don't get any compensation for it, other than the volunteer hours. and yeah, we bring all of our own gear, our own food, and yeah, none of it's supported in the work that we do, but not monetarily by the park.
That's too bad. I went on one years ago in Alaska, and they pay for everything.
Yes,
Plane trips,
yes.
food.
The work that
was
I
awesome.
did in Mexico was often like that when we were working with the archaeologists, because they were obviously under a grant or similar to do their work there. So
That makes it nice that way.
yes, very.
Really nice. Let's see. Rich Klein says, many thanks for sharing tonight. And any other questions, people? We're keeping Beth on the line now. It says another one popped in. Oh, Larry. Hi, Larry. Larry Spangler. How old do you think the bats are? And was this natural die-off over time, or do you think it was some kind of catastrophic event?
Okay.
Or do you want to take the Fifth Amendment?
Oh gosh, I know. So I might not be able to answer how old they are. I don't think that has been fully researched yet. We have our theories about how the bats got in there and why they're all there, but again, there are theories or ideas of what might have happened while we're in there. So one good theory is that the airflow in Double Bopper is so unique. It's kind of it's just different because you have this one very large entrance in one canyon, and then all the way underneath the mesa to the adjacent canyon, you have another entrance. So that's one idea, is that the airflow is such that these animals just got lost. They couldn't find their way back out, and it's been a very long time since any animal could probably walk into this cave. So things like the fox, and we found a raccoon, and the ringtail, when did they get in there? Oh my gosh, it had to have been a very long time ago. A historic entrance that we haven't found evidence of.
Fell in a hole and found themselves unable to get back out.
Exactly. The bats are a little harder to explain. Again, that airflow might have contributed. Maybe they just got turned around, or I do think
they were sick or diseased and just landed there and just died.
Right, but the other caves in the area don't have this many. It's not. We don't really find that many bats in the other caves in or sorry, mummified bats in caves in the area. So it's unique to Double Bopper. It's I think somebody said once it's a PhD waiting to happen. So if you know anybody that's interested in tackling this question, we'd all love to know.
Awesome. All right. Andrew says, thank you for sharing all of this with us. And we all appreciate that. Okay, any more questions before we let Beth get back to her life? Anybody have any burning questions for the night? And if you come up with questions after, which usually happens quite a bit, go ahead and email us, and I'll ship it off to Beth, and then she'll ship you back an answer. But if anybody has any more questions, let us know. In the meantime, Beth, thank you so much, and I'm really sorry about the technical glitches. I have no idea what happened, but you handled it very well. You did a good job dealing with it.
I apologize too, and hopefully it wasn't too much of a delay there. But yeah, like you said, everybody has your email address, and I'm happy to answer any more questions via email if Debbie will forward them on to me. So yeah, thanks everybody for coming tonight.
All right, everybody, thank you for showing up to the NSS CaveNet. We have several webinars scheduled for the next several months. Hopefully, if our speakers come through, we had several canceled at the first of the year. That's why we waited a few months. We want to thank everybody for coming, and we appreciate all of your time, Beth, and the time that you spent practicing and getting this together, and we really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Debbie, for putting it all together.
And everybody, thank you for coming. If you have friends or someone that wants to see this, send them to the NSS website at caves.org. All the webinars for the past 5.5 years are stored on the NSS the NSS website at caves.org. It's on the front page, left side. Just click on that and it'll bring up the entire library. And thank you for showing up, everybody. Cave safely, and we will see you next month.